Cleaning Day by Stephen Lake. A man walked up to a dungeon he'd played before but never conquered and stepped through the front door. However, unlike before, he didn't come in wearing his normal questing gear, armor, or anything like that. Instead, he was dressed as a simple janitor. As he progressed into the dungeon, he was confronted by a group of skeleton warriors who were guarding the hallway. "Halt! You there! Go no further!" shouted one of the skeletons. The man tipped his hat slightly at them and grinned like a K-pop rock star. "Hey there, guys. Is your boss around?" he asked. The skeletons looked at him in confusion for several moments. "He is. Why do you—" "Oh, wait. Are you the new guy we heard about?" asked one of them. The man whipped out his business card and held it up for them to see. "Yep, that's me. I'm here to clean your dungeon and make it all sparkly clean," he replied. The skeletons lowered their weapons and then pointed at a nearby door. "Oh, good. We were told to expect you. Just go through that door over there and take the elevator to the bottom level. The boss will be waiting for you there." The man nodded his thanks and then made his way through the nearby door. On the other side, he found an elevator, just as the skeletons had said, and took it to the bottom floor. Upon stepping out, he was greeted by a powerful, almost smothering wave of heat, as though he just walked into the waiting room for hell itself. Not far away, sitting on his throne, was the final boss of the dungeon. He quietly looked over at the man and his clothing and soon perked up. "Oh, are you the temp hire we asked for from the cleaning service?" he asked. "Yep, that's me," replied the man. "Oh, excellent. How soon can you start?" "Our dungeon really needs a good cleaning," asked the dungeon boss. "Right now, if you'd like." "Oh, yes, please. There's been so many adventurers through here lately that it's gotten filthy. Here, take this badge and put it on so that everyone knows who you are, and then get busy cleaning things as quickly as you can," said the dungeon boss. The man smiled happily. With pleasure, he grabbed the employee badge, hurried away, and began his work cleaning things up, starting on the 100th level. After finishing there, he moved into the side storage rooms, treasure rooms, and more. Some of the things he cleaned with soap and water, and some things he cleaned with magic. After finishing the 100th level, he then moved up to the 99th, then the 98th, the 97th, and so on, working his way through each floor quickly as he cleaned the entire dungeon and made it as presentable as possible. This then continued on for the rest of the day until reaching the 50th floor, where he stopped for the night. The next day, he returned and resumed his work, eventually reaching the first floor before finally wrapping up. After finishing his assignment, he turned his employee badge over to the skeletons who were guarding the entrance to the dungeon, wished them the best, and then headed home. The skeleton soldiers stood there quietly in the entrance and watched him go. "That is such a wonderfully nice human right there," said one of them. Another grunted dismissively. "Yeah, he's a lot better than all the others that come through this place," said another. They then quietly sat down and resumed their guard duties as the day slowly came to an end. The next morning, as the dungeon was slowly waking up, another of its employees, whose responsibility it was to restock loot in the chests and rooms scattered all throughout its dark, expansive corridors, walked into one of the level-specific storehouses to grab a fresh supply of loot, and then stopped short when he suddenly realized that the room was stripped bare to the walls. At first he thought this was just a logistics issue. However, according to the inventory app on his phone, this room should have been packed to the gills with loot items. Being a bit shocked by all of this, he quickly made his way to another one of the storerooms in the dungeon and found the same thing. Seeing this, he quickly made his way to another level, checked the storerooms there, and found exactly the same thing. Every last one of them was empty, just like the others. Immediately fearing the worst, he sent out a group text to all the other stockmen in the dungeon and told them to check their own storerooms to see if they had the same issue. To his slowly growing horror and dismay, one by one they all texted him back saying that, yeah, they found exactly the same thing on every single level. The color drained from a stockman's face as the gravity of what had just happened slowly began to dawn on him. He then reported this to the dungeon boss, who soon made his way to the first level to see this issue for himself. "Did we accidentally mismanage our supplies and just forget to restock?" he eventually asked. "No, sir. We always make sure we're stocked to the max in case we ever have a heavy day of questing. So there's no way that every single supply room could be empty like that at the same time. Something definitely happened in here recently. The dungeon boss thought about this for a second, and then paused as his phone rang. Upon answering it, the panicked voice of his secretary echoed from the other end. "Sir, we're receiving complaints from adventurers entering the dungeon and playing upper levels that there's no more loot left, and they're angry," she cries. The dungeon boss looks at his phone in disbelief, and then at the others around him briefly before looking back at it again. "Even the loot rooms are empty, and not just the supply ones," he shouted in surprise. "That's what we're hearing, sir," she replied. Just then a text message pinged in on his phone. Flipping over to it, he noticed a message from the skeleton warriors who were guarding the front of the dungeon. "Your lordship, there's a gentleman standing here with us who says he's from the cleaning company and is here to work," said the text. The dungeon boss's phone nearly tumbled out of his hand upon seeing this. He then hung up on his secretary and called them directly. "Yeah, this is the dungeon boss. Is he the same guy who was here yesterday?" he asked. "No, your lordship. This is someone entirely new," came the reply. The dungeon boss looked at the others around him in absolute shock, before nearly going apoplectic in shock. "You mean to tell me that we were robbed by a fake cleaning guy?" he screamed in disbelief. As he stood there in abject shock, trying his best to wrap his mind around what had just happened, the man who had come and cleaned his dungeon over the previous 2 days sat in a tavern and gently nursed a large mug of ale. Another man, who was sitting across from him, looked at the small pile of objects on the table in front of him and marveled at this. "So these are really from the 97th level?" he exclaimed in surprise. The man grinned proudly at this as he hoisted up his mug in salute. "Yep, they're 100% grade A dungeon loot from the 97th level. No fakes here," he said. The other man looked at him in disbelief. "But how's that possible? Nobody's ever conquered that dungeon to that level before." The first man laughed lightly at this, and then took a sip of his ale. "Unfortunately, my friend, I can't tell you that, as that's a trade secret.